Well, hey, everybody, and welcome to this midweek review with Mr. John. I am Mr. John, and last week I introduced you to a dude. He is one of the great guys in the Bible, one of God's mighty warriors. He is just plain out a follower of God, and we saw last week that this guy named Elijah was mentioned a couple times in the New Testament. One of those times he was mentioned was in the Transfiguration. Do you remember when Jesus went up to the mountain with three of his disciples, and all of a sudden they see a mist and a fog, and in that mist and fog was Moses and the other guy, Elijah. And last week we talked a little bit about Elijah and how God supplied him during the famine when he gave news to the king that there was going to be a famine. The king didn't like it, kind of said, I'm going to get you if you can't fix this. And Elijah had to leave. And all of a sudden, God supplied him with food and water during the famine with crows, right? It's like crazy. Birds brought him food. God, though, gave the food to the birds to give to Elijah. And then we talked about how he went to see the woman in the village. God said this woman would supply for him. She only had enough flour and water for her and her son, but God miraculously made it to where she could cook abundant amounts of bread and give Elijah water and never run out. God supplied mightily, and we're going to see God's hand in today's story. You see, Elijah has been preaching about his God, but he's surrounded by just a bunch of guys who believe in this God named Baal. And so Elijah is in the midst of about 450 priests and prophets of the God of Baal. And when I say the God of Baal, I'm not saying a big G. I'm using a little g here. Because this God is not a true God. And that's what Elijah is telling them. Your God is not a real God. I will tell you that my God is the one and true and only God there is. Your God is not, but these prophets of Baal and priests of Baal are not having any of it. And so a little challenge is given. So what they're going to do is Elijah says, hey, listen, here's what we'll do. We're going to sacrifice a bull. You guys will build an altar. You'll cut up the bull. You'll put it on the sacrificial altar. And then you will stand back and your God will light the fire. You can do whatever you want to try to get your God to light that fire, but you cannot light the fire. God, your God, little g God, will light that fire. So, and I will do the same thing. I will build an altar. I will put the bull up for the sacrifice, and then I will call upon the true God to light the fire, light the altar for the sacrifice. So the priests and prophets of Baal, the 450 guys, they're like, yeah, here we go. We're going to show him, right? So they build the altar. They cut up the bull. They put it up on there. And then they stand back and they start to pray. And they started in the morning and they start to pray. And that's not working. And then they start to dance. And that's not working. Well, noon hits. And Elijah he's like going, come on, guys, what's going on? We don't have all day here. Elijah is giving it to these prophets and priests of Baal. He is giving it to them straight out. And the prophets and priests of Baal are starting to get a little, probably anxiety ridden. What's going on here? We're doing everything we should. So what the priests and prophets do, they amp it up. Their dances get crazy. They actually start pulling out knives and swords and start cutting themselves to their God. And again, they go for a long period of time. They go till that evening and nothing. Their altar never catches on fire. In pure exhaustion, they kind of kick back and, got to be wondering what is going on. And then Elijah, he steps up and after he has built his altar and he has done cut up the bull and put it up there, he does something which sounds ridiculous, really crazy. Like Elijah's a crazy guy, right? He tells them, fill up 4 enormous jars of water, and I want you to dump it onto the altar, soaking the altar. And then Elijah says, hey guys, before we get into business here, I want you to fill up those jars again. I want you to dump the water on it again. And so he gets ready and one more time. Hey guys, dump the water. Now the altar is soaking wet. Have you ever gone on a campfire and you're jonesing for the s'mores and you got your stick ready, you got the thing on there, and here's your dad trying to light the fire with wet wood and it just won't light? Well, Elijah, he had built a trench around his thing. He had dumped so much water on that the wood is totally saturated, and the little trench that he had built around his altar, it's filled up with water. Almost like you ever seen a castle with a moat? He basically built a moat to his altar, right? And he kind of sits back and goes, okay. He looks at the prophets of Baal, the priests of Baal, and he says, are you ready? And then Elijah goes and he prays to God. And after his prayer, whoom. And I'm not talking just like a little spark. I'm not talking like, when you light a candle and you get a little lighter like this. Have you ever seen like movies that are in outer space and you see this just it's a laser. This is not a laser. This is a beam of fire. But these giant lasers coming from the sky and everything goes up. God gives a flame laser from the sky, hits this altar, and the altar whoosh goes up into flames. It's so big, so massive of a fire that everything on the altar is consumed. And remember the moat around his altar? Whoop, it dries up. It was so hot, so much fire. But God showed in that little bit, listen, your God, little g God, isn't a God at all. You can pray, you can dance, you can even cut yourself, and nothing is going to happen. But the one true God, he answers the prayer of his prophet, and he will light a fire that goes beyond what we expect. And man, the priests and prophets of Baal, they fall to their knees and they exclaim, your God is God. Your God is God. And just this epiphany, it's like the light bulb going off. Yeah, the Baal's the God, little g, nothing happens. Their God lights the altar. Bing! It's like light up. Not only did God in that moment light up that altar, he lit up the prophets of Baal into the knowledge that our God, the one true God, is God. So guys, we're going to continue our story. We're going to continue talking about Elijah next week. Verse is coming up. I hope you get excited when you hear these stories. This story rocks my world. I love this story. It's a great one from the Bible. But hey, listen, don't take my word for it. Grab your Bible. It's in 1 Kings 18. Grab your Bible. Read it for yourself. And when you read it, you get jazzed just like I did. You'll get fired up. And I mean it literally. You will get fired up. We'll talk to you next time. Have a great day. Bye. Jesus answered, it is written, man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God. Matthew 4:4.